Hello and welcome to another episode of Pittsburgh Sports Memories. As usual, it's your co-host Steve Word
I am Tim Hannon.
And on today's episode, we're going to be covering the biggest moment in Pittsburgh sports history. So, what could it be? So, I would say it's one of the more improbable moments in the history of sports in Pittsburgh, and it's still celebrated annually to this day, believe it or not. And any guesses, Tim, on what it could be? Or, well, I guess you already know because I told you the topic of the podcast, so. But that would be Bill Mazeroski's home run in the seventh game of the 1960 World Series. So even though this is something that kind of happened before both of our times, it's definitely something we want to cover, and it's a fun moment. And it's just, I mean, we'll kind of go over this at the end, but it's definitely, we'll debate how big a moment this is in the, I guess, what would you say, the history of Pittsburgh sports. So without further ado, let's jump into this topic here. So just for some background, since 1960 was the 52 years, is my math right on that? Is it 52, Tim? You're more of a math guy than I am, right?
I think it's 62.
62. Wow, 10 short. All right. Well, wow, 62 years. So this thing's like 3 years away from Social Security, 5 years. 67. Yeah. So it's getting close to retiring, putting it in its time. So what was different 62 years ago in baseball? So that would be the equivalent of like baseball in 1900 from today, right? Yeah. So
wow.
It's like talking about when Honus Wagner played back that, wow. Mm-hmm. So that's a long time ago. In 1960, the season that baseball had was only 154 games. So they did not have, now they have a 162 game season. So it was definitely a little shorter season by, what was that, 8 games? 8 games, yeah. And then I think also, like, what is this, October? I think it happens October 13th, so the season was definitely over way earlier. That's the 7th game of the World Series is in mid-October. Now what, they go to, like, Christmas? I mean, something like that. A big reason for that was, besides the shorter season, there is no wild card, there's no play-in game, there's no, championship series. We will have none of that. You win your pennant and you go right to the World Series. You don't collect go, you don't, you get $200, you just go right there. You're in the World Series. So also, another big difference was the mound. The pitcher's mound was 15 inches higher, and people say, who cares about that? Well, it actually makes a big difference because it's a big advantage for the pitching, because it's like you're pitching downhill. You can get more, I guess, it's easier to throw harder, and I'm sure the balls would break. It gives you more room in the strike zone for your curve and all that good stuff. So in 1968, after, I think, was it Bob Gibson for the Cardinals had an ERA of like 1.98 or something? They're like, okay, we're lowering the mound 5 inches. So, which is always a fun argument because Hank Aaron did play in 1960, if I'm not incorrect. So he played for like a lot of his career when the mound was 5 inches higher and still hit 715 home runs.
And Roger Maris did the 61 home runs. That was the next year, wasn't it? So.
Because I was just about to say, it was 1962. They went to 100 set. Yeah. So if he would have done it this year, the little asterisk wouldn't have been able to put in. We'll go over his stats in a minute. Actually, Roger Maris plays a major role in this game. He really does. Another thing that's interesting is there was no designated hitter. So the pitcher's got a hit. And the designated hitter actually would not even be in effect until 1973, and that was only in the American League. And of course, now after the lockout, there's designated hitters in both leagues. So that's just happened 2022. So you can debate that all day. I don't like it. I think the pitchers should have to hit, but I'm apparently in the minority on that opinion. So, hey, to each their own. Also, another big difference was in Major League Baseball, there were only, believe it or not, 16 teams. So like literally in the American League, there were 8 teams. In the National League, there were 8 teams. So let's see, the Brewers. I'm not seeing the Brewers on there. Houston wasn't there. The Dodgers had moved to Los Angeles and San Francisco, and the Giants had both moved out. The Senators were still in Washington. So who else were the Kansas City Athletics? Jeez. I don't know if they were before the Royals or what, but no teams in Florida. No teams in the South, really. Because the Braves are still in Milwaukee. My goodness. So it really is like just California and the Northeastern United States and a few teams in the Midwest.
Even the Mets aren't there yet, right?
Right. No, there's no Mets. Well, the Mets don't come because the Yankees were the only team in New York for a couple more years. Yeah. That's another thing that happens that plays in, as we'll get into. Yeah. But so the Pirates won the National League, which is just so weird because there's no divisions either, Tim. It's just the National League. They won their, I don't know, what do they call the National League? Conference?
Just the league. They won the National League pennant.
Yeah, by 7 games over Milwaukee. So, and the Yankees won the American League pennant by 8 games over Baltimore. So that sounds kind of anticlimactic for the end of the season. So, I mean, if you're up by that many, what was their magic number? They had to have clinched their magic number by then. So that's how the season kind of played off. So it's the Yankees and the Pirates are going to the World Series. On the 1960 Pirates record, they had 95 wins and 59 losses, and they had a pretty decent team. Their batting, they were definitely much more of a hitting team. I have some of their hitting stats here. They were, let's see, players who you might know from that team. They had Dick Groat, who played for Duke. Bill Verdon. I don't think is Bill Verdon in the Hall of Fame? I don't think he is.
I don't think so, but he certainly had a very long big career after he played, which I'm sure you'll talk about.
Yeah, and I met Bill Verdon, actually. And he ended up managing for the Yankees. He's one of if you remember the Seinfeld episode where Steinbrenner's listening, he's one of the people, he gets Steinbrenner's fired. So, Verdon Law, who plays a major role, some guy named Roberto Clemente. I ever heard of him? I don't know. He wore 21. I don't know. Played right field, something like that. Bill Mazeroski, of course. And Hall of Fame and a manager, Danny Murtaugh. Mazeroski and Clemente are the two in the Hall of Fame from that team. Danny Murtaugh is not in the Hall of Fame. That's debatable. My uncle is a huge, you think that's a big, I guess, miscarriage of justice there, that Danny Murtaugh. But we'll go over that during the game too. Murtaugh really makes some pretty smart moves during the series in general, and especially that 8th and 9th inning that kind of set up Mazeroski for his moment. But not the spot. I think everybody knows what happens at the end of the game. But hitting, Clemente had a 314 average for the season with 16 home runs. Bob Friend was their best pitcher during the regular season. And this is wild. When I was researching this is one of the things that are this is so 1960s baseball and just baseball way back when, how much things have changed. So Bob Friend had a 3.0 ERA, which not bad. The ERAs were a little lower back then. He had 18 wins. He pitched 275 innings in a season. So Vernon Law was their second best pitcher, and he had a 3.08 ERA, and he had 20 wins, so he's a 20-game winner, and he had 271 innings pitched. So really, and the next guy was Elroy Face. He was more of their reliever. He had the lowest ERA, but he only pitched 114 innings. And Harvey Haddix was kind of he was like another good pitcher, but he had an ERA of almost 3.97. He only had 11 wins, but he did have 172 innings pitched, which is still a lot. So they were really just a two-man, like, which is even back then was unheard of. Like, you know, a three-man rotation, that's not that great. Most teams did, I think, have four back then. So just, you know, that's a lot of numbers, and sometimes it's like it's hard to lose perspective. Like, okay, what does that mean, all these innings? Well, for comparison, in 2021, which would have been last Major League Baseball season, can you guess Zach Wheeler, can you guess how many innings he pitched last year, Tim? Without looking, or have you looked already?
I did not look. Let's see, maybe 150.
No, he did pitch 213, but
Okay.
that's still 60.
That's still nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember this. I remember in 2012 when Steven Strasburg, who was like that guy that like ESPN loved the hype for the Nationals, he had 160. There was a rumor they had 160, 180 inning pitched limit for that season, and he ended up only pitching 159 innings. And the Nationals were in a playoff hunt at the time. They literally did not. So I looked further back to see if anybody, like, when's the last time somebody pitched a bunch of innings? And that was 1999. Randy Johnson pitched 271 innings, and he actually had an ERA of 2.48, and he had 17 wins. And that was, that was 99. So that wasn't the 2001 season that they won with the Diamondbacks, but that's still like a 2.48. Like, Randy Johnson was really good, and he could pitch a lot apparently. So. But just for comparison, it's very rare. Like, most people, I think, go like 170, 150 innings, somewhere in there. That's probably where you're topping out at anymore. Plus, like, it's a lot different. Like, there wasn't like specialized relievers. Like, the relievers weren't called like relievers, and they didn't keep track of saves until I think the 80s. Like, they were called firemen, like, and he would bring them in when, like, oh my goodness, it's the seventh inning and we're only up by a run and we got two men on and nobody out or one out, and we'd just bring a guy and he would come in, like Elroy Face or would come in and like pitch from the seventh inning to the ninth inning. He wouldn't just come in and like, oh, I just pitched the seventh inning. Oh, another guy pitches the eighth and another guy pitches the ninth. Like, you would pitch from whenever you came in till the end of the game. So it was very different type of game back then, just was. And I think I looked up the times of the game. It was funny. I think that seventh game, I mean, the scores, they scored a lot of runs. There was 19 runs scored. It only took 2 hours and 36 minutes to play, which is just, you know, unreal comparing like 3 and 4 hour baseball games nowadays. But going on to the 1960s Yankees record, they were 97 wins, so they actually had 2 more wins than the Pirates, and 57 losses. And they had some guys on their roster here, Tim, that you may have heard of before. Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, Whitey Ford singing the blues. No, that's just the title of an album, but Casey Stengel, who was their manager, and that was all of those guys would end up in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's a pretty stacked roster.
As usual with the Yankees, that's just how they roll. So Art Dittmer, who I've never heard of, had a pretty good 3.06 ERA. Whitey Ford had a 3.08 ERA. He had kind of a down year, but he was still probably their best pitcher. Ralph Terry, who's, of course, going to go into infamy, had a 3.4 ERA with 10 wins and 166 innings pitched. And just remember, like, there's no real relievers. Like, the closest thing to a reliever between these two teams, I would guess, would be Roy Face. That was like the closest thing to like a bullpen guy, you know? So there really isn't like a lot of bullpen people. So on to what the Yankees were doing. So some guy named Roger Maris, he only hit 39 home runs this season, Tim. He kind of was slacking off. And 100, I mean, he didn't get to hit his 61 until next year, I guess. And 112 RBIs and 283 average. But thank goodness for the Yankees. They had somebody, because since Maris could only hit 39 home runs a year, they had Mickey Mantle picked up the slack and hit 40 home runs too. So, he was covering for him. I mean, that's just to have two guys over 30 home runs. And did what's his name, Maguire and Canseco ever have that in a year with the A's? I mean, that's just crazy. That's amazing. And just for fun, Yogi Berra had 15 home runs and 62 RBIs. And actually, their best hitter, although Yogi Berra was like one of the older players on the team, he was 35. Bill Skowron, who I never really heard of, he had I think 26 home runs and 91 RBIs and a 309 average. So he hit best for average. So they had like four guys that could like really hit. Not exactly murderer's row, but they're pretty good. Probably the weakness to the Yankees is their depth of pitching, I would say. So they're they have a little better depth of pitching than the Pirates, and Whitey Ford's probably better than Vernon Law overall. But the way it plays out is very interesting. There's a very interesting series, and it's one of the it's a very unique series. Like the way the Pirates won, really, I can't think of a team that's done this way before. So, what had the Yankees been doing from 1950 to 1960? Well, what they had been doing was winning 10 of the previous 12 years, the pennant they had won. So they'd been in the World Series like 10 times already. They had won the World Series 5 consecutive times from 1949 to 1953, which is still an MLB. They won the World Series 5 years in a row. That's crazy too. That's a major league record. I don't think anybody even been in the World Series twice yet. I didn't even look that up. I probably should have. But
well, the Yankees. I know at the end of the 90s, you mentioned that 2001 series where the Diamondbacks beat them. I think they were going for 4 in a row in that series because I think they had won 98, 99, and 2000, and then the Diamondbacks beat them in Game 7. So they kind of did it again at the end of the 20th century, but that was only 3, not 5. 5's crazy.
That's like the Canadians in the 70s. Yeah, it's
right.
Yeah. So, they're really good. The last World Series they won before this was 1958. So that was like literally they missed one. I think the season before the Dodgers won, they beat the White Sox in 1959. So the Yankees had taken a year off from being in the World Series. They took a season off, I guess. So in stark contrast, let's see what the Pirates have been doing. They had won the World Series in 1925, and then they had lost to the Yankees in 1927. That's, of course, was Murderers Row in a sweep. Then after the war, they really stunk. They brought in the famous GM Branch Rickey, who actually was the GM for the Dodgers, who built that team. And the Dodgers ended up being pretty good because the Dodgers never won either because they were an NL team, but they always lost to the Yankees or somebody in the World Series. But he brought in Jackie Robinson famously, and he built a pretty good team too in Brooklyn. But what he did in Pittsburgh was he famously traded Ralph Kiner, who was a really good player in the 50s, saying, "Son, we can finish in last with or without you." So that was kind of like one of his famous quotes. In 1952, the Pirates had one of the worst seasons in MLB history. I remember reading like a whole ESPN article about this. Like they won only 42 games. So in 1952, 8 years before all that, they won 42 games. That's crazy. Well, hopefully they win more than 42 this year. But hey, maybe they'll break that record.
They might.
That's pretty tough to only win 42 wins in like 162. I mean, although it was 155 or 154 back then, but that's crazy.
I believe they could do it.
You have faith in them?
I do. Plan the parade now.
It's kind of like going 0-16, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Branch Rickey retired in 1955, but the core of the team he built played in the 1960 World Series. He had like people like Dick Groat. Dick Groat was an All-American basketball player at Duke, but he talked him out of going to whatever was the NBA. I guess the NBA was around. Yeah, the NBA was around then, but he talked him into playing baseball. He also had gotten Clemente, Mazeroski, Elroy Face, and Vernon Law. So kind of the core of the team was built by Ricky. And I think the owner of the team was the Galbraiths. So the Galbraiths had bought the team in the 50s, and the Galbraiths were actually very good owners. They won 3 World Series with them until they finally sold the team in the early 80s. But so that's kind of the setup. It's kind of the battle of the Yankees who have this legendary team that are very good to this Pirates team that kind of got hot during the 60s season and have made the one dependent for the first time in what's 1925 to 1960. That's got to be a long time, right? Or no, well, 1927 to 1960. Yeah, so 33
years.
Yeah. So, hey, we're already beyond that, huh?
Oh, yeah.
What's 1979 to 2022? It's longer than that, yeah. 40-some years, yeah. So, the setup, the way the series was set up was people don't even think about this now, but, you normally play the team with the home field advantage plays the first 2 at home, and then you go to the non-home field advantage for the next 2, and then you back and forth for the last, if you need to, 5, 6, 7, right? You go 1 game here, 1 game there, 1 game. I don't know if because of the trains or they wanted to limit the travel or whatever, but back then they have the 2-3-2 format, which people argues favors the away team because if you can just win one of those first 2 games on the road, you're really set up. That means you're going to have the next 3 at your home, which means you can clinch the series, or take a real stranglehold. So it's kind of big to, especially in those first 2 games, is win both of them if you have the home field advantage. And for some reason, I could not answer this question. The Pirates had the home field advantage this year. Now, I don't know if it's just like they alternated. It's like this year the National League has it, this year the American League has it, because the Yankees had the better record by 2 games. So I'm not sure why that was, but that's the way they did it. So
that's an interesting point. Yeah, you're right. They Pirates had 95 wins, the Yankees had 97, according to your notes here. And so what was the determining? Because now, don't they do it now with like who wins the All-Star game or whatever?
Yeah, they started that. Yeah, it's definitely. I'm looking right here what I pulled off Wikipedia, which I mean they're not going to get that wrong, but it's 97 to 95, and it doesn't make any sense to me, but
maybe you're right. Maybe they rotated. Like they did that in football. Remember?
Yeah, because
the
Dolphins played. Like, why would the Dolphins be playing the Steelers in Pittsburgh with an undefeated record?
Right,
it doesn't make any sense
because they rotated.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with who had the better record. So maybe baseball was the same way. They just rotated leagues every year. Someone tell us. Someone look that up and send us an email. Tell us the reason.
I wish I knew. I asked a couple, and nobody knew. So I don't know. Yeah. So the series starts, and the Pirates, they won game 1 at home, and that was the game 1 was 6-4. So it's a close game, and the Pirates win, and that was I do believe Vernon Law was the pitcher that game. So game 2 rolls around, and you got to win game 2 just to kind of hold serve, to use a tennis term. And can you guess what the score of that game was, Tim?
Well, I don't know what the score was, but I know anytime the Yankees won in the series, it was not a close game.
Yeah. So apparently the New York Football Giants came to town and won 16-3. So on a couple Frank Gifford touchdowns there or something. 16 runs, and I do believe that was Bob Friend. Like Bob Friend had a really bad. And look at the game. The Yankees scored 16 runs, and they played that game in 3 hours. That would never happen today.
No, that would never happen.
So the Pirates are now lost home field advantage. So it's the series is all tied to 1, and it goes back to New York at Yankee Stadium. And so the Pirates, I'm not sure it was I I didn't write down who pitched. It was some weird guy who pitched I never heard of. Who pitched game 3, but the results weren't much better. It was 10-0. They pitched a shutout. And I do believe in game 2, that's Whitey Ford pitched that game. And so that was 10-0. It's not good. Game 4, the Pirates eke out a win 3-2. So that's a big win. And then it comes to that critical game 5, which in every series, game 5 is always considered kind of the turning point of the series. So now we're tied at 2. And so Harvey Haddix, who was okay, wasn't great. He pitches like the game of his life, pretty much. And the Pirates win in Yankee Stadium.
So they're coming back to Pittsburgh. 3-2 lead.
Dude,
right?
yeah. Yeah, because he pitched that. The game 5 was really the big turning point for them. They won that critical game 5-2. And Vern Law pitched the 3-2 game in game 4. So that was a key game, too. He only gave up 2 runs in Yankee Stadium to that lineup, to Maris and Mantle, and this is on top of Vernon Law pitching 270 some innings, So I mean, they're really keeping together. Him and Harvey Haddix are kind of keeping the Pirates in their series when they pitch. So now the Yankees are down 3-2. So in game 6, in an elimination game for the Yankees, Casey Stengel sends out Whitey Ford, their best pitcher, because if they don't, you know what I mean? You can't play game 7 until you get to game 7 would be my logic. Now, why you wouldn't pitch Whitey Ford in game 5 doesn't, I don't know. You could argue that all day, I guess. But they win, and it's another blowout. It's 12-0, and that's at Forbes Field. So when the Pirates won Game 5, they were in really good shape because, think of it, they only had to win one of the next 2 games at home. So they really had a really good chance of beating the Yankees, even though the Yankees were probably the better team. So that sets up Game 7, but the Game 7 is now they don't have their best pitcher. Think about it. The Yankees just kind of wasted Whitey Ford on a 12-0 game, and it's like now Game 7, you don't have your best pitcher. So they send out Bob Turley. In contrast, the Pirates manager Danny Montauk gets to set out Vernon Law, who's already won his other 2 starts and has pitched incredible the whole series. So he's already won games 1 and 4, and he had not pitched since Sunday. I looked it up, and this game was on a Thursday. So he had at least 3 days rest. So they got a good chance here. They've set themselves up. Murtaugh's got them to a Game 7 elimination game. Anything can happen, right, Tim?
Yeah.
Anything does happen here.
Well, and like you said, I mean, the Game 7, you get to something like that in baseball, it's all about who's on the mound. And you have Vernon Law, who I think, did he win the Cy Young that year? I know he won the Cy Young award.
I think I have it somewhere. Yeah, he did win a Cy Young somewhere. But
so you have an ace pitcher, and they're sending out Bob Turley, who I don't know if he was. He certainly wasn't. He certainly wasn't on the
Whitey
level
Ford.
of Whitey Ford, right?
Yeah. Let me see his pitching stats. Bob Turley. He had a ERA of 3.27. He'd only pitched 173 innings, but he's definitely not their best pitcher. Art Dittmer and Whitey Ford are definitely, and Terry. Well, Ralph Terry his ERA was a little worse, but Bob Turley, I think Bob Turley had 9 wins. I mean, like you said, it would have been better to have Whitey Ford. You'd rather, I don't know why you don't pitch. I guess. Like I said, you can't play Game 7 if you can't get to Game 7.
Right.
So if he sends out Turley in Game 6, he's kind of
Well, you said that Game 5 was so pivotal. I mean,
yeah.
Maybe going back to that statement, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it was so pivotal, because if the Yankees win Game 5, now he can save Whitey Ford for Game 7. But the Pirates win Game 5, now we can save Vernon Law for Game 7.
Yeah.
Because maybe if we lose Game 5, we're rushing Vernon Law out there for Game 6 because we have to win or else.
Yeah. It's a good. I mean, that's why I said they always say Game 5 in these 7-game series are like very pivotal, and you see because it sets you up because now you're up 3-2, and you only have to win one game to win the series. So
he waits. He throws the pass, and it's intercepted. George Polamalu at the 40, 35, 30.
Steelers versus Ravens is the best rivalry in all of pro sports, and now that series has been chronicled in Pittsburgh versus Baltimore, the unofficial history, an all-new book from the Pittsburgh Sports Memories podcast. Relive all the fierce battles and exciting moments from this amazing rivalry. There were legendary plays like Troy Polamalu's pick six and the immaculate extension, and there were crazy incidents like Joey Porter chasing Ray Lewis into the parking lot, or the Ravens putting a bounty on Hines Ward. We cover all of it, including some stories you may never have heard. Buy a copy for yourself, or get one as a gift for the Steelers fan in your life. Find it on Amazon, or see the link in the show description of this episode. And thanks for supporting the podcast.
So Game 7 is Bob Turley versus Vernon Law. And it's on Thursday, and Vernon Law, like I said, has had a couple days to rest, so it's not like he's super tired. In the first inning, the Pirates take a 2-0 lead on a Rocky Nelson home run. Rocky Nelson played first base. Bob Turley is not having a good game. He doesn't even make it out of the second inning. He gives up 2 more runs. He's replaced by a guy named Bill Stafford, who only gets 1 inning, but I think he gets an out, but he gives up a couple more runs. So the Yankees are down 4-0 in the third. And they bring in Bobby Shantz. The Yankees bring in Bobby Shantz, who actually ends up pitching like pretty good for the next 5 innings. He keeps the Yankees in the game, keeps the Yankees from getting any more damage than 4-0. And hey, 4-0 with that lineup, even though I know Vernon Law's pitching great, you got to remember Vernon Law's pitched a lot of innings, and it's the 7th game now. It's you're not going to hold Maris and Mantle down for the whole series. Well, not that they have, but at least not the whole game. Vernon Law gets to the 6th inning, and he gets in trouble. So Murtaugh goes to the guy who's been reliable out of the bullpen, that's Elroy Face. And he had been pretty good in the series, too. But unfortunately, Elroy Face gives up 4 runs, and the Pirates are losing going into the 8th inning. And that's where we're kind of picking up more like play-by-play. The 8th inning is definitely one of the crazier innings in World Series history. A lot happens.
Forbes Field in Pittsburgh, the 7th game of the 1960 World Series.
And it's Mel Allen on the call for the Yankees, and I think Bob Prince is on the call for the Pirates. And so it kind of weird setup for TV. And I didn't even talk about the TV. So how this video ended up coming about being was they didn't save like videotapes or anything. They didn't have videotapes, number one, I don't think. They used like film maybe. But they didn't save anything like this back then, because who would want to watch a rerun of an old baseball game? But there was some guy named Bing Crosby, who was not some guy, but he's a famous singer, and he was a part owner, like a minority owner in the Pirates. And for some reason, Bing Crosby was a big Pirates fan. I'm not sure why, but he was. And so he was in Europe when this game was being played, and he really wanted to watch it. And since he couldn't like turn on his cable TV, since that didn't exist for like another 40 years, or his cell phone, or catch the game streaming, since that wasn't going to exist for like another 60 years, he had his staff at his house set up a projector, and they projected the game onto a screen and recorded it with a movie camera. And nobody knew that this film existed because they didn't really have any film of all this, of the whole game, for years, until finally like somebody in the Bing Crosby estate was going through his basement, and they're like, hey, what's this film, all these film reels? And people were like, hey, it's the 1960 World Series, the 7th game. Cool. So that's kind of how this came to be, and now it's on YouTube for all our viewing pleasure. So without further ado, we will go to the 8th inning. It might be Verdon who gets. Yeah, here Bill Verdon's that gets the hit. That's Samoli's on first and Verdon's up. And this is a critical play. It's a weird play.
There's the ground ball hit to short, knocked, and it hits Kubek in the face, and all hands are safe. The ball took a hard hop. A double play ball bounced up and hit him in the face. All hands safe.
So if you didn't catch that on the pod, like what had happened was Bill Verdon hit a sharp grounder that hit a rock in the Forbes Field infield and hits Tony Kubek, the shortstop for the Yankees, right in the face, and everybody's safe. So there's two men on. I can't remember if there's anybody out, but it's a weird play, and it sets up the next thing because now the Pirates are down, I do believe, and I think it would be 7-4. Yeah, so they're down a couple of runs.
That is a huge play because Verdon hit it right to the
that should have been a double play.
Yeah, it would have been 2 outs, and instead it's 0 outs. I mean, and like you said, it wasn't like Kubek made an error. It wasn't, it was just it literally hit a rock and it took this really weird bounce at him right. I think it hit him right in the throat, didn't it?
Yeah. And he came out of the game. He didn't play the rest of the game.
He was badly, it actually hurt him pretty good. So, I mean, what a fortuitous bounce for the Pirates. I mean, you want to talk about, that's almost immaculate reception level. Like the ball just goes in the direction you need it to go in. Exactly the direction you need it to go in.
So we'll skip ahead to the next important at bat. I think it's Dick Groat. Yeah, it's Dick Groat. So 2 guys on with Dick Groat.
The last half of the 8th inning. Pirates get the first 2 men aboard. Yankees 7, Pittsburgh 4. There's a shot to left field for base hit. Samoli rounds third, comes in to score. The throw into third, and Burton stops at second, and it's 7-5. And Casey Stengel is out of the dugout.
So the Yankees make a pitching change, I do believe, here. And some guy named Roberto Clemente comes up. So Clementi's up with now, 7-5. I think there's still nobody out. And we'll see what Clemente does. All right, let's fast forward to the key point of that. But Clemente took his time getting a bat, and they still played this game in under 3 hours. I just can't believe how quickly this game moved. There's 2 outs now. So
Clemente takes it low outside. Ball 1, 1-2.
And so he's in the hole. He's down to his last strike, and they're still down. So
half of the 8th inning, the final game of the World Series. And Clemente hits a soft dribbler towards Skowron, and nobody's going to get over. Bases loaded.
Well, that was another fortunate play.
Clemente did not hit that ball hard, but he was enough of an athlete and so fast they couldn't cover first in time. Like it just fell right in between the pitcher and the first baseman. Like I've seen that happen a million times in Little League, but you don't see it as much in like Major League Baseball.
Yeah, this inning should have ended like 3 times already.
So the Pirates are catching some breaks here, but Clemente's a great hitter, and he made a play. He had 2 strikes on him. He was down to his last strike, and I've heard people call that a Baltimore chop for some reason. I don't know, but it was just a high bouncing, like looping infield hit, and it wasn't an error. It was another play. It really wasn't an error. It's just Clemente's fast, and he hit it high enough. He was able to beat the guy to first. I mean, he hustled down that line. So next up comes catcher Hal Smith.
2 runs in. 7-6 New York. 2 balls, 2 strikes. And Hal Smith hits a drive to deep left field. The ball is way back out there, going.
So there's Hal Smith hits a home run, Tim. There's your World Series hero for Pittsburgh, right?
That's amazing, right? Like, no one remembers that, and he should be – there'd be a statue of him if what happens next didn't happen.
That's it. Yeah, it's just like what – it's like what would have happened. So they bring in Ralph Terry, who who comes in and he actually cleans up. He gets the last out, and they don't have any more. He finishes up the 8th. So now the Pirates lead. What was that? It was 4 runs, right?
Yeah, 9-7.
9-7. So, and they're literally 3 outs from the World Series, right? So Danny Murtaugh goes. He brings in his best regular season pitcher, Bob Friend. He's already burned Vernon Law's best starter, Elroy Face's best reliever. So he's down to Harvey Haddix and Bob Friend. That's his last 2, besides whoever else is left in the bullpen at that. I mean, so he's kind of out of options at this point. So, and I think as I watch this game, I realize he had Bob Friend on a very short leash. He wasn't dumb enough to just, well, that's my guy. Let's throw it out there and let the Yankees score 1 million runs, right? So the way he manages this 9th inning is very skillful with his pitching because, he was really in a tough spot, quite honestly. He burned his 2 best pitchers, and I think he took out Elroy Face to pinch hit because he was down 2 runs in the 8th. So he had to take, you needed the runs again. Once again, it's very Danny Murtaugh did a very good job in this 7th game. It was a heck of a job managing this. So 3 outs away, you just got to get 3, and no sweat, right? So Danny Murtaugh went with his best guy, kind of like how we mentioned the Diamondbacks in 2001. It is weird how there is some weird similarities. Remember they went with Randy Johnson and Kurt Schilling? He's trying to do kind of the same thing, only before anybody thought of it, and he didn't have a computer to tell him to do this. So Danny Murtaugh knew what he was doing. Go figure that. So unfortunately, it's the heart of the Yankees batting order. It's just not going to be easy, is it? So, it's going to be Bobby Richardson. Dale Long is pinch hitting for Kubek because Kubek got hurt. And then they have some guy named Maris and Mantle and Berra if you don't get Maris and Mantle out. So, Bob Friend has his work cut out for him. So, let's go to Bobby Richardson's at bat. This is in the top half of the 9th inning, 3 outs away from winning a World Series.
Drops in there for a base hit.
So Bobby Richardson just hit a single. He just hit a single. So now they got their first man on with nobody out.
There's a line drive to right field for a base hit. Bobby Richardson holds at second base as Clemente gets off a tremendous throw.
Did you see that throw by Clemente? He almost threw him out at second.
Yeah.
So thank God Clemente's in right because that guy could have been at third. But yeah, so now it's first and second with nobody out, and Danny Murtaugh has seen enough of Bob Friend.
And with Roger Maris due up, Danny Murtaugh signals for a left-hander. He's had 2 men warming up, and I believe it'll be Harvey Haddix who had been warming up with.
This is this is like Stan Belinda-esque at this point. This is the situation. Only Stan Belinda didn't come up with a Hall of Famer at the bat. I mean, all Harvey Haddix has to do is get 3 outs with Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle to face. Oh, that's it, Tim. That's easy, right? No sweat. He's got it. I mean, he's like the Pirates' 4th best pitcher. And he's already pitched like a bunch of games, a bunch of innings this series. So, I mean, this is crazy. He has his work cut out for him. Let's put it to it that way, right?
For sure. Yep, and 2 guys already on base too.
Because this is an absolutely pivotal at bat. This is like a big at bat in this game.
That was at Yankee Stadium, a game which the Pirates won by a score of 5-2.
Pirate fans, you hear them booing. They're booing Bob Friend. Classic.
Maris looks at pop-up.
Look at this is huge.
Hal Smith is under it. 1 away.
Oh wow.
That was a huge, like that pop-up, that was a huge out in this inning. Now all he's got to do is face Mickey Mantle with, if Mickey Mantle hits a home run, that's the go-ahead run. So, it's not like Mickey Mantle ever hit any home runs, right? He's only hit 40 of them this year.
There's a line drive in the right center field for a base hit. Richardson will score along around second and goes on into third. And it's 9-8 as Mantle comes through with his third hit.
And then we're coming up on another weird play that if it happened today, this play would be like reviewed a million ways to Sunday, but it's the 1960s and we don't have any of that silliness. So Mantle, it's now 9-8 and Yogi Berra. It doesn't stop with this Yankees lineup, does it, Tim? It's just they just keep coming. So Yogi Berra, 1 out, and the Pirates have a 1-run lead, but they do have an out now. So
Army Haddock working carefully. McDougald on third, running for long. Mantle on first. Pirates leading 9-8. 1 out in the 9th inning. And there's a shot grab by Nelson. Steps on first, and Mantle gets back to first. He's safe, and McDougald scores the tying run on an amazing turn of events.
Wow.
Now, what do you think, Tim? Do you think he was out? Because like if you listen to the what Bob Prince call, he thinks he's out there, but that's Mel Allen making the call, so he's safe. So if you're a Yankees fan, he's safe. If you're a Pirates fan, he's out. That would have been the World Series right there. Pirates win, Pirates win.
So Steve, describe, because we're watching.
We're watching it.
People are listening.
So
to
what happens
is,
happened. So Yogi Berra hits a sharp single down not sharp, but a sharp ground ball to the first baseman who was Rocky Nelson, and Rocky Nelson grabs it, and it's such a sharp hit that all he has to do is step on first. So when he steps on first, Berra's out. So now Mantle is free to go to second, but you have to tag him because there's no force now, right? So they got 2 outs. The runner's going on the hit. So as long as he can get Mantle out before the guy gets home, or Mantle gets safe, the series is over. Mantle dives around his tag and is safe, called safe at first. And like I said, if you listen to the replay on the Bob Prince, like I've heard the Bob Prince call and I've heard the Mal Allen. Mal Allen says he's safe all the way. How about that? Bob Prince says he's out all the way and says this should have been the Pirates. So, like, in the space of, like, when I say the 8th and 9th inning, there is, like, so much weird stuff that happens. There is a lot of, like, this is another one of those critical plays. If they just tag Mickey Mantle out here, that's it. The series is over. The Pirates win. So, it's now tied 9-9, and Mickey Mantle's still at first, and they still have to get another out. And it's just like, if that happened today, like how many times would they have replayed that? And like there'd be like 100 different camera angles. Was Mantle out? Was he safe? You can't really tell there.
No, you can't tell. And Mantle, that was a mistake, I think, trying to dive back to first, because Steve, if he runs to second, like you said, they have to tag him out. They can't force him out. So even if they get him in a rundown, the guy's going to score while he's in the rundown. So him diving back to first almost killed the Yankees there. Like he would have been smarter just to run to second and then like keep them off,
drag it out.
Yeah, just because again they would have never tagged him in time. The guy still would have scored.
Because the guy was there. Well, there was only 1 out, but the guy had to be running as soon as maybe he wasn't because there was only 1 out, so he might not have been running. If there's 2 outs, he definitely would have been running. But
right, and then so that would have been the 3rd out. Like that's what I'm saying. I think Mantle diving back into first was a huge mistake on his part, because if he was out there, if they did apply the tag as he's diving back to first, that's it. That's a 3rd out, and like you said, the series is over. But if he just runs to second, whether he's safe or out, it really doesn't matter at that point.
And Hal Smith is World Series hero, Grand Slam.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. Like I knew some of these details, but you're right. The Kubek getting hit in the face, this play, and man, imagine what it would have been like as a fan. You're down 3 runs in the 8th. You have this amazing inning. Hal Smith hits that home run. You're on the top of the world. We're going to win the World Series. We just have to get 3 outs here. And then the Yankees come all the way back. I mean, that, like you said, very Stan Belinda, Doug Drabeck reminds me of that inning because it was the same thing. We had a 2-run lead, right? And so now you blow the 2-run lead. And what a bunch of ups and downs in the span of half.
I will say this: Stan Belinda didn't have to face Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris and Yogi Berra. Okay, I don't care who you are. That's a tall task there.
Well, and again, that game it was 2-0. In this game it was like literally a half an inning ago you were down by 3.
Yeah.
Now you're up by 2. Now it's tied again. I mean that is just a lot of emotional ups and downs.
I will still say the key play to that inning was getting Roger Maris to pop out with nobody out. That's the key play in this inning because that saved them from having the go-ahead run. They would have been ahead a run even if Maris gets a single or maybe a fly ball to the outfield. And then did you see Clemente boot the Maris single after he made that great throw? Like Clemente booted a ball out there and right. Did you see that?
Yeah, that was on the Mantle hit.
Yeah, on the Mantle hit, Clemente booted a ball. It didn't cost him, but it definitely didn't look good. But he was very young. He was still a very young player back then, so he wasn't quite the Roberto Clemente of 1971 yet. So,
and to your point about Mantle hitting a lot of home runs, I mean, it was like you said, you had Maris and Mantle, and even Berra. Like none of those guys. Mantle got a hit. Maris pops up to the catcher in foul territory, and Berra hits that ball right to Nelson at first base. I mean, that was very fortunate that out of all 3 of those guys, all you got out of that was one single. You didn't get anything. Like you said, a home run. I mean, then they're in the lead.
Yeah. So Haddix gets the Bill Skowron hits into an ending inning, force out. And so we go to the bottom of the 9th, and I don't think anything too exciting really happens in the bottom of the 9th, too. And this is not Mel Allen on the call. So, how about that, Mel Allen?
At the end of 8 1/2 innings of play, it's the New York Yankees 9.
Ralph Terry is on the mound for the Yankees.
And Ralph Terry, of course, on the mound will be facing Mazeroski. And to go over that play once again, it was a hard hit drive down the first base side. The Nelson fielded on the first hop and tagged the bag at first. That eliminated Berra. He was out. And then Mantle could have been in a rundown, but it was not the case. He dove back safely to first base. Here's a ball one, too high down to Mazeroski. And the Yankees have tied the game.
So after the first pitch is a ball.
Yeah, this is it right here.
Well, but they have a conference at the mound.
Yeah.
I wonder what that was about.
Hey, could you throw it right down the middle about belt high?
Yeah, seriously.
Art Ditbar throws. Here's a swing and a high fly ball going deep to left. They do it. Back to the wall goes Berra. It is home run.
Can't catch that, can you, Yog? So if you haven't figured that out, or if you're just like under a rock or something, Bill Mazeroski on an 0-1 Ralph Terry pitch hits a home run over the left field wall, and Yogi Berra all he could do is watch. So it's just an amazing play and a lot of fun, and that's unreal that all that happened in those 2 innings. It really is maybe the 2 of the greatest innings in World Series history. So, okay. So, Ralph Terry, gives up the game. It's the only home run to win a World Series in Game 7, I do believe. It's still one of the most iconic home runs of all time, even 60 years later. The Yankees outscored the Pirates 55-27 in the series, but they lost the series. So for all you fans of politics, this is how the Electoral College works. Just because you won Game 6 12-0, the next game is still 0-0. So it's kind of the same concept if you can't understand it. So there you go on that. So that when you win one game, it only counts for one win. So even if you win it 16-0 or 12-0 or whatever you want to buy, can you guess the series MVP was given to Bobby Richardson, the from the Yankees, because they vote on that probably in the 8th inning. So what was the aftermath? Well, the Pirates don't have too much success the rest of the decade until 1971. They kind of rebuild around Clemente. and they win another World Series in 1971. It's hilarious. The Yankees and their fans still cry about this game. I couldn't find it. Like Ken Burns must have that on lockdown with like his copyright. Like I really wanted to put like the clip of like Billy Crystal crying about losing this. Because I guess Ralph Terry came back the next year and pitched a pretty good World Series. Like he won another World Series after this. But it's just fun to watch like Billy Crystal and like Joyce Kearns Goodwin and all them like, oh, we lost the World Series. It's like, it's just too much Schadenfreude going on there if you're a big fan of Freud. So taking joy in the suffering of Yankees fans. The Yankees would win 2 World Series with Mantle and Maris in 1961 and 62. But after 1965, they have like this big decline, and they really stay that way until George Steinbrenner buys the team in the late 70s. After this game, Casey Stengel kind of goes into like a Bruce Arians type retirement. Like, yeah, you're going to retire, but I don't want to retire. You're retiring. I'm retiring. It is. So Casey Stengel says he'll never make the mistake of turning 70 again. That's why he thinks he got canned. Really, it's probably he should have really pitched Whitey Ford in Game 1 and Game 7. He really needed to save Whitey Ford for those 2 critical games. That's probably one of the biggest reasons that the Yankees didn't win this series. He goes on to manage the Mets, like we said, for a couple of years. He has a lot of great quotes throughout time if you get to look them up. I'll do some unsung heroes of this team. I think Danny Murtaugh really is. Like, maybe I've just been hanging around my uncle too much, but like after watching this game, he's very underrated. He manages the Pirates from 64 until 64, and then he kind of is like off again, on again until 1976. He died shortly after the 76 season at age 59. He's an underrated manager. I mean, I really think some of those moves, especially in the 9th inning, taking Bob Friend, you could have stuck with Bob Friend there, but that was pretty smart in the 9th inning. And then going to Harvey Haddix, like, boy, I don't think anybody expected that, but so, he was either genius or lucky. I'm going to say he was like pretty smart there because he made a lot of really smart moves to keep the Pirates in that game. Why is he not in the Hall of Fame? I don't know. I guess it's tough for managers to get in. Like we said, Hal Smith probably should have been the World Series hero if it wouldn't have been for Bill Mazeroski and, us giving up that lead in the 9th. But He was drafted by in 1961 they had an expansion draft. That's when the league expanded, and by the team called the Houston Colt 45s. That's what they drank after the games, maybe. No. That's actually, they became the Houston Astros. He died in Columbus, Texas in 2002. Vernon Law, who I believe was a deacon in the Church of Latter-day Saints, he won a Cy Young Award. He led the National League in complete games. He had a 3.44 ERA in the World Series. He won 2 games, and he kept the Pirates in Game 7. Harvey Haddix, I think he's another unsung hero, 2.45 ERA in that crucial win in Game 5, and got him that bottom of the 9th inning jam. They really should have won on that hit. If they just could have got the call or a little better tag on Mantle, like he really, that really should have been the end of the game. On to the sung heroes, I'll call the people Elroy Face. He's well known. He's got them out of some jams in Game 5. Got them through some tough innings in the middle of Game 7. Clemente, of course. He got a clutch hit pretty well for this series. Had 3 RBIs. Kept that 8th inning alive on that big chopping hit. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, that would be Bill Mazeroski. He's the guy that hit the big home run that put him in the Hall of Fame, basically. But he was also a very good defensive second baseman. He had this trick, like, instead of catching the ball at second, he would let the ball bounce off his glove and into his throwing hand so he could make the exchange really quick. So he turned a lot of double plays like that. So, but he's in the Hall of Fame, too. We said at the beginning. And, of course, on to the conclusion, which is it weird that every Pirates game is won in Game 7s in the World Series?
It is weird. But, Steve, I think you forgot one of the sung heroes, which is the Rock that was in the dirt in the infield.
Yeah. Well, there's actually a story about, I guess somebody was playing the Yankees in a later World Series, and somebody was like, go up to what's his name, Kubek, and just say rock or something. And it's like, okay, yeah. Whoever was dragging the infield that day and didn't do a very good job in Forbes Field, isn't that like the most Pittsburgh thing ever? It's like, what about that rocket in the infield? It'll never have any influence on the game. Just let it go.
I mean, that seriously, I wish somebody would have dug that out and we could have it like in one of our
in the Western Pennsylvania Sports Museum.
Yeah,
here's a rock that caused the ball. It has to be. Is it the most dramatic championship winning play in Pittsburgh sports history, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, if you compare it to, because probably the Immaculate Reception, maybe the Santonio Holmes catch, right? I'd say people might tend to forget it wasn't just that play. The Immaculate Reception was a crap game. It was a 7-6 game, and then you had this amazing play. But no one really ever talks about what happened before that. This was a crazy back and forth game. I think it's more comparable to the Santonio catch because that was also a crazy back and forth game. You had a bunch of stuff happen leading up to that. But I don't know. Bottom of the ninth inning of Game 7 of the World Series, winning it on a home run. I don't know that you can ever really top that in sports. Like I just don't know that you can. And to, you know, you said it's never happened before or since, and they've been playing the World Series for 120 years now, and that's never happened before in a Game 7. So I think you can call it the most dramatic, most memorable, whatever word you want to use for the moment in Pittsburgh sports history. I can't argue with that.
Yeah, the only other one I had the Fleury save in Game 7, the Hornquist goal in, 2017, but that was Game 6. The Willie Stargell hit a home run in once again, another Game 7 in Baltimore. But that was in the 7th inning, and the Pirates scored some insurance runs after that. And DeCalvi did have to come up with a save against the Orioles there. But I think it is. I'm going to agree with you, Tim. It's definitely the most dramatic play in Pittsburgh sports history. And even though neither of us were there to witness it, it's still so talked about and so iconic. And we've seen it like a ton of times. Thank goodness for Bing Crosby for saving that for us. Yeah. But I mean, it's just, it's great. And I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did, that look back. And I hope it's, you probably a lot of stuff you didn't know happened in that game happened. So thank you for tuning in, and check us out on the web, and check us out on Twitter or Facebook or wherever you get our podcast. And keep spreading the word of mouth, and favorite us, and we'll talk to you next time.
Oh, we've got some kind of buckos, and we're some kind of glad, for we knew that the Yankees could be some kind of hat. People said it was possible that Apple they can spank, but we're some kind of richer with the money in the bank. Swing hard, swing hard, swing hard.